Hello and welcome to the GMBN Tech Show. On the show this week, I got a table. We have some new UK-based enduro bikes, as well as fresh products from Argon and Evoc. That's not all. We've got a new approach to inner tubes, as well as all the normal good stuff. First in the news this week, we have a new bike from the UK manufacturer, Kotik. For those of you that don't know, Kotik are a brand based in the Peak District in England and are known for predominantly making bikes out of steel. So what's this new bike about? Well, it is a long travel 29er called the Rocket Max. It uses a front triangle made of Reynolds tubing, and it's got some really nifty features. First one is actually something that Kotik as a brand are doing. We've talked about this before. It is their love it or money back guarantee, which I think is great. It's great to see a company backing their product like that. For a large, it's 490 millimeters reach, so very progressive, 63.5 degree head angle and 448 chainstays. For the seat tube angle, they're actually doing something which I think should be encouraged in terms of how we do our geometry charts. They give you your seat tube angle based on how much seat post you have exposed. Now, why does this make a difference? Well, I want you to think about if your seat tube has a kink in it. That means that your actual seat tube angle and effective can be different. But if your actual is pointing quite far back, it's quite slack, it means the higher you have your saddle, the slacker your effective, which is drawn direct between the saddle and the bottom bracket, becomes. So why does this make a difference? Well, it means that sometimes with geometry charts, it's really hard to go from those two-dimensional numbers to a three-dimensional real-world setting, really. And this is going to help people that maybe, want to size up, size down. Maybe they kind of have quite a long inseam, so they run quite a lot of post exposed, because it's also coupled with the insertion depth of those seat tubes. So it's going to enable riders to maximize their seat post dropper options, really. And it's not going to leave people that are especially sizing up, if they were to do so, that are going to be short-chained, because what that can mean is unexpectedly they might not be able to run a long dropper seat post, but here it's all there, and all the information on insertion depth, well, it's great to see. So what else is there to bear in mind? So this bike is built around Kotik's long shot geometry. And what I mean by that is it's kind of their name for their more progressive angled bikes, and it's built around a 35mm stem, although it does say on their website you can even think about going a shade shorter. So it's basically, the stem's a really, really important part of the bike, and it's not something that's an afterthought for them. Everything is being, optimized together as a package. So complete bikes start from 3,650 and they go all the way up to the dizzying heights of kind of titanium cranks. But check out their geometry chart. There is something, maybe it's the silhouette, I'm not so sure, about aggressive steel bikes that has almost something of a cult following in the UK. We love them. I'm thinking as well as something like Starling bikes and also steel hardtails. Well, a bit of a fan favorite in the UK. But I just think it looks great, and it just goes to show, people say aluminium, carbon. Well, steel is real. It's definitely a viable third option. So next up in the news, we have a new bike from the UK brand Privateer. This is the 161. So this bike has been on our radar for a little time, ever since it was prototyped, and we saw those pictures, well, quite some time ago now. So the bike is actually quite different from a lot of things on the market at the moment, because it's built with a couple of priorities in mind. So first up, value. This bike comes in at less than £3,000. And if you see the spec, it's very dependable, very sensible, putting the money where it counts. It actually isn't too dissimilar from one of those airdrop Edit 3 V3s, kind of a progressive angles, alloy, basically really good suspension, but they're maybe not that lightweight. It's for people that really want to ride hard and really enjoy that kind of aggressive riding. And it's also built to last, really big welds. And also, interestingly, they're going a little bit deeper than that. So if you have a 4-bar linkage and you have an asymmetrical design, that means that it's different from one side to the other. It means that sometimes the load on bearings can be different depending which side of the bike you're on. So sometimes you might find the drive side bearings in your linkage go sooner than the non-drive side. So to combat this, they've actually, on the main pivot, put 3 bearings in there and put 2 on the one side that sees more wear and 1 on the side that tends not to wear as quickly. Little innovations like that to kind of hopefully give somebody a bike they can race all season without having to work on all the time. And racing is obviously a really big part of the package, and the angles allude to that as well. So these progressive angles that people have settled on, you might also have noticed that these bikes have what would a couple of years ago be considered to be really long chainstays. Well, this is done for a couple of reasons. So this bike, the Privateer, has 446, and the Kotik has 448, but what's 2 millimeters between friends. So they do it because, as you've noticed, the front centre of the bikes have got a lot longer, not just because of reach, but also when you slacken out the bike, you're increasing the distance between the bottom bracket and the front axle. So you need the bike to pair up nicely and be balanced. It's not just about having a really, really long front centre. And a couple of years ago on bikes like the Process, when that first came out, it was, commended for having such short chainstays. People loved it. And it's a really kind of complementary thing to have, really, because, you can move your weight around the back end, no problem whatsoever. The issue is that if you imagine the chainstays like a lever, so if your weight's going through the cranks, the further they are away from the rear axle, the more it's going to put your weight over the front, which is kind of a good way to stabilize the bike in turns, because similarly, as you can imagine, the longer reach you get, the more it moves your weight backwards. So it's all about balance. And for a race bike where people are hitting high speeds, you want a lot of stability. So that's why they do it. But it'd be really interesting to see how brands kick on in the future, going from this kind of more settled down idea of geometry, and what will be the next step. I'm very excited.
Okay, so first up, the new Argon GD1 Evo grip. So this is their downhill bias grip. Of course, you can use it for whatever you want. It's available in 2 different thicknesses to suit both smaller hands or just a slimmer grip preference, or the bigger hands, or a bigger grip preference if you want a little bit more damping. Now, they're quite a lot different to the old one, although loosely at a glance, you'd be forgiven for thinking it could be the same grip. Now, they're slightly shorter, they're about 5mm shorter in design. They're available in 3 colours, that same frozen stealth black, so it's kind of like a translucent black colour. The orange colour, which is the factory preference, and this new olive green, which also has an oil slick lock-on clamps on there. The right and left specific, they come with an end cap built into the design. And they've got a few different things up their sleeve. So it's a much softer compound rubber on these now. Better in wet conditions, which is great, and also just a bit softer. So if you're like me and you like to ride with no gloves, they feel a lot nicer on bare hands. Now, they're slightly different around the flange design here. Of course, the flange is nice on the downhill grip to really butt up against, but they've kept the flange a bit softer and a bit smaller here. On the underneath, you've actually got, instead of a flange all the way around, you've got like a thumb grip design here. Now, this is really soft, and it almost reminds me a bit of a mushroom style grip, like the ODI long necks from back in the day. Really comfortable on your thumb, especially if you're riding with no gloves. Really nice little addition to the range there. Like I say, they're directional, they're slightly shorter, they retail for $39.95 currently, and they're on sale, and they look good. And next up are the Evoc bike packing bags. Now, I did see these at Eurobike last year, but I didn't really get to have a bit of a play with them, so it's kind of cool to have a look at some of these in the flesh. Now, there's 6 different bags available. Now, although they're branded up as bike packing bags, don't think of them as just that. They could be used for a number of things. If, for example, you do your grocery shopping, you could use something like the bar bag. It's actually quite a big bag. In fact, there are some shots of it on a bike on screen just so you can see them for relevance. The beauty of these is the fact they're waterproof, it's expandable, and the fact that it mounts via a BOA system. They're really secure, really fast to take on and off the bike. But the one I want to really talk to you about, in fact, the 2 I want to talk to you about, of these 2 little mini frame packs. Now, you might wonder why I'm talking about bike packs or bike packing bags on GMBN Tech. This is really what you want to be seeing. Now, if you're the sort of rider that likes to mount an inner tube, a CO2 cartridge, any sort of repair stuff on your bike, yeah, it's great, but there are a few downsides to this. One of them, of course, is you can sort of tarnish the paint on your bike by doing so. And if you ride in super dry and dusty or super wet and muddy conditions, kind of like we do, or maybe our Californian friends, you'll find that those bits you're carrying are just constantly covered in dust, and it always doesn't look the best on the bike as well. Of course, it's very purposeful if you're a racer because it's got nice and quick access to those things. But you could also use these for that exact purpose. Thinking about space it takes up on a bike, and there's obviously, especially with sort of monocoque front ends and hydroform tubing, you get nice shapes. Now these little bags fit really well on all sorts of different bikes. I've tried these on a number of mine and both of these fit on all of my bikes. And you can fit an inner tube in these, you can fit a CO2 cartridge, you can fit a number of different things in there. And it fits straight inside without rattling around. You can also put house keys, any number of things on the inside without having to hold things in your pocket. So you can put a phone in one. Really cool little idea. They barely weigh anything, so they don't take up any space. And they've got fixing points all the way around the bags. So actually they're quite useful in a number of spots on a bike. I just thought everyone should know about those because I think they are a little hot ticket for storing those essentials on your bike. Okay, so everyone knows about inner tubes. We know they're made from butyl rubber. We know they come in both a Schrader valve, also known as a car valve, and a Presta valve. You get ones with removable valve cores, you get ones that don't. Now they quite often weigh a bit. This is a fairly lightweight one, but even then, in fact, let's weigh it and be sure, shall we? This is a fairly lightweight one. It's a 29-inch tube with a long valve stem on there, and it weighs in at 226 grams. Okay, not that heavy, granted, but that's rotational weight on a bike. And of course, inner tubes aren't the best because they get punctured fairly easily. I'm just going to cut the chase. This is a Tubolito inner tube, and this one, also for 29-inch wheel with a long valve, weighs 44 grams. That's quite a difference, isn't it? Yeah, it's a very different product. Okay, now I would probably choose, if I was going to use one of these, to not use it in place of an inner tube. I'd carry this as a spare. I mean, the size of the thing, you can remove the valve stem from that and keep that somewhere separately. That can be put in your pocket. That is absolutely tiny. There is a premium for this though. They retail for about 35 bucks. Yeah, pretty crazy in respects of price, but insane in the realms of weight. Now, of course, you could use these on your bike. You could use these as a spare, it's up to you, but I want to draw your attention to a few things. Now, traditional butyl tubes, they're not recyclable, and there's loads of these things running around. Okay, we can repurpose these. We can use these for lots of different things. I say not recyclable, not commonly recyclable, not with your household rubbish and things like that. So on that respect, that's actually quite bad. Whereas these are made from thermoplastic and these are easily recyclable. And the fact they're absolutely tiny. They're also, what Tubolito claim, more resistant to punctures. Now they're available in two different guises, a lightweight version and a slightly heavy one, but even the heavier one is only about 20 grams heavier. Like they honestly weigh nothing. They're quite ridiculous. They test them using a mandrel, so their claim is based on a mandrel. So when I did the Vittoria video, in fact there's a clip on screen, when I was at the Vittoria factory out in Thailand, they had a tool for testing the thickness basically of the tyres. Now they do this with all different size mandrel bits on there, and it has to adhere to a certain standard. Now they base their claim on the same basis that it takes twice the impact to get through one of these as it does with a regular butyl tube. So that's quite a claim, and yet you can repair these as well. I'm not trying to sell you these because of the fact that that is a 35 buck inner tube. It's super expensive and it's super niche. But if you're a racer or if you're a bike packer or a traveller, carrying something that small might be a really cool option for you. There you go, it's on the table for you. 35 bucks in a tube and weighs almost nothing.
Now it is time for the quiz. So, mountain biking and a little known thing called the internet have actually been around for comparable amounts of time. But which bike company was well ahead of the game when they took out the domain name bikes.com? Which bike manufacturer runs the website bikes.com? Second question. So Troy Lee Designs is world renowned for their protective gear and their range of full face helmets. The current one, which we featured on this show, being the D4, and before that there was the D3 and D2 respectively. But what was the original helmet called? What does the D stand for? And last question. Earlier on we talked about Privateer bikes, but the brand is an offshoot of which UK wheel manufacturer? And there we go, so tune in later on for the answers. Now it is time for Bike Caves. This is the part of the show where we get to showcase your hard work, where you work on your bikes, where you store your bikes, etc, etc. So, if you've got a good submission, use the uploader in the link below to send it in to us and hopefully we can feature on the show. So this week we've got a submission from Matt. So basically this is his cellar and he's kind of moved into a new place about a year ago and was greeted with a massive cellar as big as his living room. So he thought he would really put the work in now that he's spending some more time at home with lockdown. So not only have we got all these fantastic photos showing his, all his protective kit, everything very well organized, but also accompanying it is this really cool video about, the bike storage itself. I think it looks really good. It's got some kind of, some Star Wars sort of lighting in the background. Looks really, really, really cool. It's got a full shadow board as well. One thing I actually really like is, mountain bikes, especially now, are getting bigger and bigger. But, small BMX frames, just go straight on the board. They look really cool. But yeah, looks lovely. We've also got loads of storage for his bike bags and, really, really nice. It kind of works, having the wheel just below the front end. For me, I'm loath to take a wheel out of a bike. That's the only thing. I'm just like, when I want to ride it, I want the least amount of fuss possible. I just want to get on it and go. I kind of like to work on it when I work on it and ride it when I ride it. Not much in between. But yeah, it looks really good. Got a snowboard and stuff there. It even sprayed on that race face logo. Nice one. Thank you very much for sending that in, Matt. And cheers for the video as well. I think that's great. So now it is time for Top Mods. Now this is where we get to see all the work you do on your bikes, how you modify them, how you tailor them to suit your needs. And this week's submission is from Jaroslav in Slovakia. And I don't think I've really seen anything like this before. I think it's just brilliant. So he calls them the mother and the father bike, but basically mating two bikes together to just build exactly the bikes he wants. So he's done one for him and he's done one for his lad. And I just think it's absolutely brilliant. So we've got a real nice message just detailing all the changes he made, which sadly is so long I can't read it out. But basically just explaining that everything is being built to his exact specification. I just think, they're done properly as well. And I've really got time for that kind of craftsmanship and that imagination. I think it's really, really cool. I'm flicking through these pictures, kid's bike is done with all these, lovely bolt kits and everything. And I mean, imagine being, your first proper mountain bike your dad's built you. I think that's probably the coolest thing. So not only that, but we've also seen he's kind of got a custom cage there on his SRAM Eagle derailleur. And yeah, I just think it's brilliant. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. When I saw the first picture, I thought the first picture I saw was the bottom bracket in various various amounts of togetherness, and I thought, this is probably playing with fire. But I'm won over. I think you've done an absolutely fantastic job, and this really seems obviously you know what you're doing, and honestly, I think it's just brilliant. So yeah, absolute kudos to you. Now, not all Top Mod submissions have to be quite as spectacular in terms of the, the skill and the mastery, really, as Yaroslav's, but we still want to see anything that you do to make your bike your own. So it can be changing the tires, it can be something like taking bikes apart and mating them together, but whatever really, just get them into the uploader and hopefully we can feature it on the show. Now it is time for those quiz answers. So, first question. Who was the forward-thinking company that realised the internet might just be quite big? We better get the name bikes.com. It was, of course, Rocky Mountain. So, kudos to them. I think it just, every time I go on it, it always makes me smile. Secondly, what does the D stand for in Troy Lee's range of full-face helmets? It is, of course, Daytona. And which UK wheel manufacturer spawned the company Privateer Bikes? It is Hunt. So guys, how many did you get right? Get in the comments to let us know.
All right, now it's time for Rewind. This is the retro part of the GMBN Tech weekly show. We go back in time and we look at where all the cool tech you're riding now came from. So if there's anything out there that you want to know about, let us know in the comments. Use that hashtag Rewind. Alternatively, and even better, if you've got something old, if you've aspired to know about something old, get in touch. There's our uploader service at the bottom of the screen there. There's also a link in the description underneath this video. Get in touch, basically. Tell us what you got, show us what you got, bit of show and tell, and we'll do the same back in return. Now this week, instead of diving into all the amazing stuff you've been sending us, we'll save that for next week, I want to show you something quite cool. It's actually on my screen now, I'm trying not to look at it. It's a video from GT Bikes, and it's all about the history of the brand and the history of where the suspension started coming in. Now, a couple of weeks ago, they actually aired this live, the documentary, online. You had to sort of sign up and tune in. It was free to watch. But for those of you that missed it, including myself, they're releasing it on a weekly basis as a documentary series. And this is some snippets from part 1. Now this is all dating back to the very beginning when the mountain bike movement started hitting the suspension bikes, and GT, or aka Gary Turner Bikes, in fact he's in the video himself to tell you the story, they came up with the RTS design with designer Jim Busby. He's also in there. There's loads of legends. Richard Long as well is in there, Hans Ray, Mike King, Brian Lopes. There's absolutely loads in there, and of course Julie Furtado. The story about Julie Furtado alone is worth watching this video for. I can't emphasize it enough. It's really, really cool. Well worthy of your time. And there's one dropping each week now for a month. So definitely be tuning back in for those. So the RTS, just a brief bit of history on it, is their first officially made frame. There was a previous frame, and I've managed to track one down, which we'll be showing you on GMBN Tech soon. And it never saw production. There's only a handful around in the world. But the RTS was the first suspension bike they came up with. And this is it on screen. So it's got a high pivot. So look at the pivot halfway up the seat tube there, and it's got a rocker link behind the bottom bracket there. Now that rocker link drives a shock that's mounted by the down tube there, but interestingly, the shock actually penetrates the seat tube through a little hole in order for the rocker to compress it. A really, really strange and individual design. Now that bike was amazing when it first launched because of the fact that a lot of people were trying to launch suspension bikes and some were pogoing around. You had high pivot bikes like the Cannondale, the early ones, and they just didn't work that well. But the GT, they kind of nailed it. You pedaled hard and the bike basically stood up and just went. It was a really, really effective design considering what there was at the time. And it was a really, really nice bike. I mean, ultimately, you're going to watch this video and see the Julie Furtado story. The fact that she'd never ridden one and she won a world champs on it. I think that kind of says everything about the bike when it came out. But GT have got an amazing history in the sport and they really were pushing the envelopes of design. It's a very cool little project to tune in on. The link to that video is going to be in the description underneath our weekly show. So click down there and have a watch. It's well worth 20 odd minutes of your time. It's a great piece of history and it'll tell you a lot about a very cool bike brand. It actually goes under people's radars a bit more than it should do these days, I think.
And that is it for another weekly GMBN Tech Show. I just want to say thank you very much for watching. Thank you for all your submissions and we'll see you next time. Cheers guys.